Sufferin Succotash. Succotash. The Sufferin Succotash. Hello, boys. How's everybody tonight? Welcome to Melbourne Musos, Facechook Live. Ooh, and what we're going to get into here is a little bit of... There you go. Cartoon music. Okay. So what I'm talking about, my name's Quinlan. Welcome to Melbourne Musos, Facechook Live, destined for Channel 31 near you soon enough, in a couple of weeks, I think. I'm a bit ahead. I'm a week or two ahead, I think. Anyway, what tonight is all about, on the face of it, is cartoon music. Ah, we got to love the old Bugs Bunnies and everything else. Meh. Oh, we grew up with this stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about tonight is cartoon music and a few other things. And what we have is, we're talking about, you know, Tweety Pie, we're talking about Sylvester, we're talking about Daffy, we're talking about Bugs, and basically one of the great composers of cartoon music was Carl Stalling, who I've talked about in the past, but I'm going to go this way a little bit too. So I'm going to go into here and go Carl Stalling, composer. Carl Stalling, composer. There it is there. There we go. Straight up and straight in. Okay, there we go. Oh, Carl W. Stalling. November 10th, 1891 to November 29th, 1972 was an American composer, voice actor, and arranger for music in animated films. He's most closely associated with the Looney Tunes and Tunes, Chris, and Merry Melodies shorts produced by Warner Brothers, where he averaged one complete score each week for 22 years. Oh my Lord, I've got to put out 2 TV shows a week, and I know what that feels like. Oh my Lord. Anyway, biography. Okay, Stalling was born to Ernest and Sophia C. Stalling. His parents were from Germany. His father arrived in the United States in 1883. The family settled in Lexington, Missouri, where his father was a carpenter. Oh, if I was a carpenter and you were a... he started playing piano at 6 by the age of 12. He was principal piano accompanist in his hometown silent movie house. For a short period, he was also the theatre organist at the St. Louis Theatre, which eventually became Powell Symphony Hall. There we are. That's all it is. And what he would used to do was when you're doing things, you know, at random, you're looking, like if you're doing a movie score, of course, you know, you're going to get the strings coming in with wee, 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 wee. You know, you've got to work it out, you see, kind of thing. And in the good old days, you'd have to time it. And if you've got a tempo to a metronome, or, you know, whatever it might be, you have to work out what beat it is. So it might be, wee, comes in the second beat of bar 54, you know, that kind of thing. And these days you can line it up and all that, and then you've got tape. You can work with tape these days as well. Tape. Those days, the good old days, I should say. Anyway, there it is. And composing style. Although Stalling's composing technique followed the convention of music accompaniment from the silent film era that were based on improvisation and compilation of musical cues from catalogues and cue sheets, he was also an innovator. Stalling is among the first music directors to extensively use the metronome to time film scores. See, what did I tell you? And he was one of the 3 composers, along with Max Steiner and Scott Bradley, credited with the invention of the click track. You mongrels. And what happens is when you start doing things like that, there's a little thing there that I haven't got to. His stock in trade was the musical pun, where he used references to popular songs or even classical pieces to add a dimension of humour to the action on the screen. There you go. So there's that. That's what we're doing. what's going on is if I was to actually take something like that, use the metronome, use the click track. I should have brought my metronomes over there. I should have put it in. Oh, my God. And what goes on is that, as you good people out there know, that I take little things and work with them. Every voice has its own tempo, you know, that kind of thing. Man. There it is, you see. Now we're getting into little concepts and what kind of things that influence. So what goes on is I'll go back to my trusty iPhone. I believe I own it now. I got the phone bill. I think this is a fake, you know. No, I double-checked. It's true. I think I own this cracked old thing now. Anyway, it still works. So what it is there's your Carl Stalling, you know, the king of cartoon composing. There it is. Now, who does this kind of thing? Now, one of the things that happens is that you're looking for humour. You're looking for different things at different places and all that. And one of the things is a little thing called Dadaism. And I shall read again for you here. Dada, or Dadaism, was an art movement of the European avant-garde in the early 20th century, with early centres in Zurich, Switzerland, at the Cabaret Voltaire in 1916. New York Dada began around 1915, and after 1920, Dada flourished in Paris. Dadaist activities lasted until the mid-20s. They've gone on a little bit more than that. But some of the people that are famous for things like this is our one and only Frank Zappa. I do believe there's a quote down here, if I checked it. Okay, music. There we go. Where is it there? Oh, I can't find it. But anyway, basically what it was is Frank Zappa was quite the Dadaist. And he also mentioned Spike Jones a lot, who was a jazz musician in the 40s and 50s, who was just funny. He would, you know, he'd do bicycle horns and all sorts of stuff. You've got to think of that kind of thing as putting a title on what Harpo Marx used to do. You know, and the Marx brothers, you know, they were Dadaists if you really want to put a meaning on them with their humour and stuff. And then it goes out to people like, you know, Mike Patton, and who does so much stuff with samples. And the last Phantomass album came out in the mid-2000s was a thing based on cartoons called Suspended Animation, which I have in there, but I'll put it up there. And what goes on is these kinds of influences, you can't get away from them. I mean, when I start talking about David Bowie and his cut-up lyric technique, which he got from William S. Burroughs, you know, that kind of thing. So he'd get all the lyrics, he'd get a lyric that he really liked the sound of, and then he'd write it down, and then another lyric, and at some point, there's a doco out there on it too in the mid-70s, you know, around the time of the Heroes era, you know, the Berlin Trilogy and all this. And what goes on is that he would cut the phrases up and then throw them around and all that and mix them up and go, there's the song, there it is, and that's what you've got. So when you're dealing with all of a sudden hello, boys. They put me off. Anyway, what happens, what you've got is that all these sounds all of a sudden are humoresque, and they when you put them together as a pastiche, they sort of make sense, and you know, you get a flow through it. And we know it best as things like... Listen to the music. I won't play over it. Wah, wah. Pum. Proud. Horns. Wah, 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 wah. See? It descends. That's Carl Stalling. So as Davy gets to the last one... Oh! As he gets to the last one... Wow, wow. How do you make a violin sound drunk? That's what goes... Wow, wow. They must have had a ball putting that music together, but it was so precise. And some of the anecdotal stories is... we're talking about the Warner Brothers lot, and you're talking about musicians who were crack musicians in the day, right? They'd go straight off doing some incredibly famous film, you know, kind of, I don't know, one of the great 50s films, if you like, or whatever it is. And then they'd find out that Carl Stalling was in the house, and they go, oh, geez, I want to get a part of this. Let's have a look at this. Just bloody hell! You know, you might have a tempo, the metronome, the dreaded flick track, and all of a sudden... Keep the click track going, boys. And there you go. It's very Dada. All that. So getting a little wriggle on and all that, I've mentioned people like Phantomas, Suspended Animation, that track. Very famous artist on that, Japanese artist too. And it's all based on little cartoons and things like that. Lots of little tracks that Mike Patton is wont to do with things like this. And then you have Spike Jones, I've mentioned, great jazz musician, right in the middle of something. Bicycle horn. Frank Zappa loved Spike Jones and by his own admission was a Dadaist. And I couldn't find the quote, but look it up, it's there. And he said, I finally found something that I could relate to what I was doing with the music in my life, was roughly the quote that I read not 1 hour ago, but I won't go fidgeting for it, I'm live. So what happens is when you're talking about Dear Mr. Zappa, you're starting to talk about treatments and stuff. And when he started to do the tape, you know, like the Beatles did, you know, with Sgt. Pepper's and all that, working with the tape and, you know, I buried Paul. And what it was you get that kind of thing. And it's techniques, you know, like Revolution 9, number 9, with... Yoko. And what happens is she was of her own way a Dadaist. I'm actually putting something together which I'll let you know about pretty soon. More than meets the eye is what I'll say. And then when you're going into that, you're talking about some of the great composers and the real contemporary composers like John Cage and Henry Cowell, people like this, you know. And when you're dealing with this sort of business, all of a sudden you're starting to talk about the mid 20th century, where you had people like Georges Ligeti and Stockhausen, Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, with computer and stuff. They weren't necessarily Dadaists, but there was a movement of getting things really different, you know, sort of, you know, just a revolt against the times, the wars and all that. So these are some of the people that put together some of this revolting music. And oi! And so what happens, I'll move on to the next little tidbit, is that when you're doing things like this, you're hugging. There's a term called hocketing, where you can have different parts of the orchestra, if you will. It's a little bit like taking Mary Had a Little Lamb and then scoring each note for a different, instrument. So it'll be meh, eh, oh, eh, oh, and all that. And that's called hocketing. In the most simplest kind of way of hocketing is when, it still happens to this day sometimes, is that when you're playing, if the composer is composing on a piano, you can breathe while you're playing, okay? Trumpet players need to take a breath at some point, and if the piano player is doing a long line, like they could just keep on going. I have to take a breath because I'm going all that. But you would have divisi in the middle, so it'd be like a tag team thing. So you'd have trumpeter one going over to you. It'd be the tag team, like that kind of thing. So when you're dealing with things like that, you can hock it, like semi-quavers, let's say. Dance to that. So if we're doing things like, what am I going to do? Well, I did Sufferin.
Sufferin Succotash. Sufferin Succotash. Sufferin Succotash.
Sufferin Succotash. And what happens is I'm almost like hocketing on the drum set. At some point, this is a drum show. And so what goes on is if I'm doing, say, my paramadoodles. Triple, double, single, and double. Triple, hey, bang, and there you go. Now what I was doing then was a paramadoodle pyramid, which I've explained many times on the show, but as a reference it's right, left, right side paradiddle, single. So that's a single. Then you do doubles, triples, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and around. Then you mix them up. Oh, sorry. Ah, boy. And there you go, you see. So it's almost like hocketing within the drum set, you see. One of the things that I often find when I'm drumming, and giving lessons, I should say, is that when I've got my students, say, playing on a practice pad or, for argument's sake, a hi-hat, and they're doing their mixed sticking, such as the paradiddles and the inversions, you know, the basic reverse, outwards and inwards, and all the things that you have to do. As soon as I say, just put your right hand on the floor tom. That's right. And I go, paradiddle, paradiddle. They can't work it out, you know, because it's the different sounds. It's ooh, ah, ooh, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ah, like that. Okay, there you go. That's all. That was all just a single parody. There you go. All right, I'll get a little wriggle on here. So what we've got is that. Now, one of the other things that I love doing behind the scenes is Foley. I love doing Foley when I'm putting things together for impromptu TV, and when I'm putting together, say, something, you know, like the Foley underneath, say, well, the other day on TV was A Day in the Life, the impromptu episode with Magda Williams. If you're out there watching, thank you very much. Wonderful. And the idea was, let's do Shakespeare's sonnets, part 2, because we've done them earlier. With, well, I had done them earlier, some of them with Julie Storer, if you're watching. Mwah! There you go. We're working on something now. Just got pinged by YouTube, but that's another story there. Anyway, and what happens is that underneath A Day in the Life, Magda did sonnets, and it was like a day in the life of a lovely lady. And what it was, you know, doing the morning run, and then the day's work, and then getting dressed up, going out, and it was just the day. And I just let I sent Magda the book, and I said, pick whatever you want, and it's her concept, but that's what it was. It was just the idea of putting it all together. Now that's Foley. Like, so I basically filmed driving in the car, walking along the doggy beach, you know, this kind of thing. I do a lot of that. So I'm always sort of chipping away at doing different things. And then there's the little library, and then when I need something, I'll put it in. Even just today with what Julie Storer and I are doing. Julie sent me some wonderful footage, and that's going on. And beautiful bird sounds, just sounds of nature and all that stuff. And of course I went, oh well, that I can put that in there, and that segues into that, and this is that. And sometimes you just put that in, and you'll get the ambient thing. There's plenty of things in or on YouTube where it's like ambient music to fall asleep by. So you've got things like rain on a roof, or you've got wind going through the forest and all that sort of stuff, all these different kinds of things. I've even got an app where you can put in train sounds, that kind of thing. And, you know, lots of different things that happens, and it just sort of goes and off you go. Brian Eno is great with ambient apps as well. And they're generative, you know, that kind of thing. They move with algorithms and stuff. It's wonderful. So these kinds of things get used a lot, and in everyday stuff with Foley. Even if you go up to Warner Brothers World in Queensland, they have the Foley room. I haven't been there in years, but they'd get a kid out, you know, one of the kiddies had come out, and they've got microphones on a little plot of gravel. And then there's other things, and they've got a mini door, and there's a microphone with lots of reverb, so you close it and it's like that. And you can get that as an app. You know, I've got the Halloween app with all sorts of squeaky door business and stuff. That's Foley. And this is what gets used so often. I mean, even when you're talking about things, I'm really rattling off tonight, aren't I? But if you're talking about Songs for the Deaf by Queens of the Stone Age, that's almost a concept album. In the sense that it's like you can hear the radio change, you know, that kind of thing, and then and away it goes, you know, the songs, that kind of business. And you hear that with Pink Floyd, with "Wish You Were Here" album, you know, like the title track "Wish You Were Here." You can hear the radio getting tuned, and then you can hear the guitar from the radio. And then David Gilmour starts playing the lead line to his own track on the radio. Clever. There you go. So I'll wrap the show up. This is called a cacophony. Get that cat off of me. My name is Quinlan. This is a weird one. Bowie, Dadaism. People I mentioned: Vandermas, Mike Patton, Frank Zappa, David Bowie, William S. Burroughs very quickly. Oh, and this will be up tomorrow. Get that cat off of me.